Well, welcome to class. We're going to talk about wireless local area networking. We're going to talk about the Wi-Fi as a wireless network technology, deployment scenarios for wireless LANs, the roles of organizations in providing the direction and accountability for within the wireless network industry, and some basic attributes and advantages of wireless LAN standards, amendments, certifications, and products. Okay, I'm going to basically go over how everything functions for the wireless network. We're going to talk about the PAN, the LAN, the MAN, and the WAN again. Y'all love that one, right? But can you actually have a wireless band or do what?
Bluetooth.
If you can have a wireless PAN, you can have a wireless band. Okay? What is a PAN? It's a personal area network, basically within 33 feet, like we talked about. Instead of it just being a regular network where you have the cable running, you actually have it wirelessly. So I'm going to skip a lot of information in this chapter because it's basically just the wireless aspect of these, right? Do you need me to go over the topologies again? And to bore you to death? I'm going to anyway, Cole. Just for you. Okay, wireless PAN. That's anything within 33 feet. That's why you can have a wireless mouse, a wireless keyboard, things of that nature. Wireless LAN. You have your laptop. You connect to the wireless network. Either on the 5 gigahertz channels or the 2.4 gigahertz channels, which is the ISM or the UNII bands. And those switches or routers that you connect to are connected to the physical infrastructure network or the wired network. Okay? Wireless MAN. Have y'all heard of WiMAX? And I talked about WiMAX being in Austin, where the whole metropolitan area is a Wi-Fi zone. Okay, downtown Austin. That is a WiMAX area or a wireless MAN. Wireless WAN. You don't see these very often because there's not really a big infrastructure enough for wireless WAN, but you could make it physically happen. Okay. Your biggest, really, if you want to call it that, is more of your cell signals. Okay, that's a wireless WAN. Yes, Derek. You got to speak up. I can't hear you.
The wireless WAN, isn't that what military bases use?
That would be a wireless MAN because it's not a big enough geographic unit. Or wireless CAN if you really want to say that. Okay. These are going to be basically your cell towers that go all over the nation. That's a wireless MAN. Or wireless WAN. Okay. Some wireless LAN ideas would be your SOHOs, your enterprise deployments, extension of existing networks to remote locations that otherwise would be a little bit out of the range of the physical connectivity. Wireless hotspots, carpeted office, educational, industrial, healthcare type facilities. Now, when we talk about a last mile, anyone know what a last mile is? No one? Aaron, what's a last mile?
It's if you can't run the cable all the way to like individual or business kind of.
Nope.
Like the wireless.
Whether it's wireless or not, what is the last mile, Derek?
Isn't the last portion that we're before structure?
No. The last mile is from that central office, let's say Cox Communications central office, to my point of demarcation on my house. That's the last mile. From the point of demarcation in, it's my responsibility. From that point of demarcation back to that extended central office, not the downtown one, but the one that's in my neighborhood, where all the coax comes to, that section is called the last mile. Does that make sense? You have the same thing when you have a phone system. That tower, as you're going down the road, that big green thing that sticks up about this high off of the ground and has everyone from all the little small ones throughout the neighborhoods, they come into it. From that point in, that's what we call a distributed central office, into the house, is the last mile. Roughly, and the reason they call it the last mile is roughly a mile from that segment in to your house is a mile of cable. The first mile is from the main source of ISP to that central office. So you have a first mile and then the last mile. Now they're not physical miles. I mean, the cables could be a lot longer than that, and that's why you could be 2 miles from a central office and trying to get DSL, but you can't because the way they run their cables to your house could be 6 miles. And that's why you couldn't get DSL, you couldn't get UVerse or anything of that nature. Okay? Yeah. I miss it by 15 feet. I don't care. I've got Cox with 100 meg, so why would I want to lower myself to UVerse standards?
And they claim that the universe is the best.
That's all marketing.
Miss my mile, one mile. My parents said it don't. We're switching over. I'm like, cool.
Small office, home office. What is that? That's the application of the infrastructure that is within inside your home or within inside a mom and pop shop. When you get to that, from that point of demarcation in, that small office, home office. Okay. Now, we have enterprise deployments where it comes into a server room, and you can have multiple wireless points throughout, but they're all going to be connected back to some server room. And this better be a 1, 6, and 11. Otherwise, we're going to have interference. An extension of a network's into remote locations. The 802.11 wireless LAN is typically deployed as an extender or extension of the existing wired network infrastructure. Why? Because wireless is slower. And it's not as restricted by where you can bury cable. Okay? Wireless LANs are part of every major network in some way. And remote networks locations may include a SOHO so that you can get it out, or they can have public hotspots, things of that nature, okay? Public hotspot. Mobile user connects to the wireless hotspot, which connects to that ISP of that facility, goes out to the net. Pretty simple.
Just want to mess with people at Starbucks.
Carpeted office deployments. Why we use the term carpeted? Because you're not going to want to rip up your carpet to lay down a Cat 5, are you? It looks neater to use wireless. You don't have wires coming down the wall or anything of that nature, right?
Yeah, but you have a bit more trouble with the wireless trying to troubleshoot it than you do with the Cat 5. You gotta do is look for the blinking lights for the Cat 5, but if you want to look at the needs, you're going to have more problems with the wireless. Experience that.
Not necessarily. Wireless is cost, portable, mobility, and convenience. Okay. Carpet office deployments. You may want to put them out here so that you're not having to run cables everywhere. Unless you have a rising floor, where you can run them all underneath and then put the carpet tiles down on top of it. That's the smart way to do it. Educational institution deployments. Wireless LANs are very popular. We have them here, don't we? Okay. We do campus-wide LANs amounting to thousands of access points. We don't have that many. We probably have hundreds of access points, but not thousands. And increased mobility for you to take your computer throughout the network. Industrial, you want them up high so they can cover a better range of materials and processes. Where you don't have the ability, you're not going to run a Cat 5 on a floor in which you have a warehouse and you're using forklifts, are you? Trust me, it's been there, right, Cameron? You actually buried one, didn't you? Yes, dear.
So, okay, wouldn't you, with Wi-Fi, run into a problem in warehouses that have the metal shelving?
No, because you actually put the antennas down so it covers it on the plane below it, not up. How you adjust your antenna, that's why you don't get just a little Soho box that doesn't have any external antennas. Because when we get to it, we'll talk about the azimuth here in a couple chapters. And I'll bring one up and show you what I'm talking about, because it'll be easier for you to see it then while I'm discussing it, then trying to get a little ahead.
I know when I was working at Hard Graphics, they have all the Wi-Fi in the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they do.
Yep, the reason they put it up there is so that you don't see it. It looks a lot nicer, neater, but it also kills you from 100 megabits down to 11 megabits. A transfer speed. So, what's your prerogative? Okay, healthcare deployments. Hint, hint, hint. For those that are in my next class, where you might want to put them if you decide to use them. Which, if you do, you will fail my class.
Why don't you tell us to?
Yeah, don't you want to wireless?
Hey, I already showed you what we're going to use.
There are commercial standard Wi-Fi adaptions that you can put into a healthcare environment that are compliant with HIPAA,
So don't use wireless.
that are not compliant with HIPAA. Because I will get you on that one. Healthcare deployments, hospitals running 24/7, 365, usually. Unless you're out in Timbuktu somewhere. It may be Monday, Friday, 8 to 5. The nearest ER is 100 miles away.
I will crawl.
Or die at home.
One thing that you really got to worry about with wireless is any external interference that you can come up with. Like these little babies. Fluorescence will kill your signal. That's why I don't like putting them up in the ceiling, because it has to come back down through that layer of EMI interference.
That's the worst.
Okay?
I hate with Wi-Fi to make it easier for people to hack in.
Not necessarily. It depends on how you got it set up. 802.11 standard also talks about how HIPAA can be complied with healthcare. When you deploy, it's going to be functioning for your business the way you want it, right? Or it should. If not, then why'd you invest the money into it? They say patient registration, patient charting. This right here, patient registration. Would I want my text being sent across a network? Speaking of,
Plain text, no.
I have got Verizon on a problem now. And I had Verizon as of 2 days ago for my cell. Now I'm with a different company. All because while I was investigating whether I wanted to be a little bit cheaper and buy something else, or go to a different company to save money on, I was looking at all the termination fees and all this other stuff. When I called them up, they asked me for my last 4 through the automated system. So I put it in. Then the lady gets on the phone, first question, what's your last 4? I'm not telling you. Well, sir, I have to. No, you don't have to have anything that I'm not willing by law to have to give you. So if anyone asks you for your last 4 verbally, do not give it to them. They're not entitled to it. If you've entered it already through the automated system has already validated you as a customer of the company. I said I'll give you my address or other public information, but I'm not going to give you my social security number or my birthday because it's none of your business. Yes. And I said, I'm sorry, but I'm not. And she argued with me. And then the survey comes up and asks me what I thought of her. I gave her a 0. The manager's supposed to call me back and didn't. And so I called up to terminate the phone contract with them today. And they are waiving $870 in early termination charges. I said, you will waive this or you will face prosecution. And they go, how can you do that? I said, well, have you ever heard of the U.S. Patriot Act? Or the Privacy Act of 1974? Or the Computer Crimes Act? And I started naming off all the ones. Many of them didn't even apply, but still it scared the manager into doing it. But it's all of what you know. All right? You go in and you say, hey, I'm saving myself $870 I don't have to pay Verizon now. Even though, and it's all stemmed on the basis this lady argued over my private information. Okay, Cameron is calling me, or I'm calling Cameron. He answers the phone, wants to know my last 4. He's a physical person. Do I trust him? Do I know him?
No.
No, I don't know you, Cameron.
I'd like to see how you deal with it going up to the hospital, because they ask that all the time.
I refused to give it to him.
Oh, do you?
And they asked me, I said, Have you heard of the Privacy Act of 1974? Yes.
Yeah, 'cause
And I just smile at them, and they go,
'cause you know
okay.
they use your SSN as your file number.
I will only give them, my initial and my last four, and that is it. And it's because that's how they can look you up in the system. Other than that, they don't need my information. Especially when they do blood draws. They like to know your full name and your full social. I'm like, no.
That's how Rex. So that's how they're like, well, we need your phone number. I was like, you got it on file.
Anyway, like we were talking about, I'll get back on task here. The last mile is basically your endpoint to endpoint, okay? That's where you get provided your service from that ISP. That's the last mile. Okay, DSL, like I said, was in last mile, the 2 mile. Have y'all ever been told what a DSL is? Or how they come up with DSL? And why it can only go 2 miles? Have y'all ever been told? Okay. On the 110 or the 66 port switch, okay? I mean, you've gone into rooms and you've seen all these cables coming in one side going out the other, right?
Yep.
You have your 8 lines, your 4 pair coming in here. That's a block. That's the other end. Basically, Cat5 is plugging in, except they're all punched down. In the center here, for all these, there is a spring. You take that bad boy out, I can now go up to 2 miles. That spring is in, I can go up to 100 feet because it acts as resistance. Y'all have heard of resistance? Like, it basically provides attenuation to the line so that you cannot get a full signal. When you say I'm ordering DSL, they pay a guy that $75 installation fee to go click. Now you know. But that's why you can only go up to 2 miles, because then you have attenuation on the line. And to provide you that minimum service that AT&T has to by federal law in the Telecommunications Acts, there's one of 1980 which actually split Bell and then brought them, and then they started working themselves back. There's 96 was the second revision. 96 is what allowed this to occur, but they can only give, the last mile is actually 2 miles max. That's why 2,000 feet from the central office. If you're greater than that, you cannot get DSL. That's why they're slowly but surely getting UVerse in bigger areas. They have to come and put a whole new central office in there to give it the power to send that signal to your house. So now you know why it takes forever, because they have to run all these fiber lines to get to create the central office and get all the equipment in there, then to distribute it down your copper. Now you know the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey once said. Okay, high-density deployments. Some industry experts say that in the next few years, the number of installed wireless devices will exceed installed wired devices. How many want to say that's true? Okay, if I had 25 people in here, I guarantee you that 25 people would have a cell phone. There are 16 computers in here that are all wired, or 17. Would the number of people in this room, wireless devices, exceed that of the wired devices? So the statement is true. Good job. You might catch that on your quiz. Municipal law enforcement, you may not either. Municipal law enforcement and transportation networks. Basically, there's a lot of ways that you can apply this, and it depends on where you're at. That's why I'm going to start skipping some of this stuff, because there's not really going to need to be. Now, we have what we call a point-to-point connection, right? Remember when I said, when we were talking topology on last week, the point-to-point connections are your WANs, your serial lines that are going from router to router, your octa lines or fiber lines going from router to router, right? Those are point-to-point connections. You have your point-to-point connection here. All it does is a long-range coverage. Wireless point-to-multipoint. I can have a transceiver and a receiver on this building. In this case, it's just the center one is the transceiver. Why? Because it's transmitting the signal. The receiver is on the other end to receive that signal. Make sense?
How would the middle one receive the information if needed?
Do what?
How would the LAN one receive the information if needed?
Oh, they'll have a receiver on here, pointing in both ways. A couple different governing bodies that you need to be aware of. The ITU-R, which is the International Telecommunications Union. I don't like them. And then you have the local regulatory requirements, which are FCC, and they will come after you in a heartbeat. And the European version of the ETSI, the European Telecommunication Standard Institute. And then you finally have the IEEE that gives you the 802.11 standards. Okay? Now, here's where we have fun. We have the 802.11 standards, and the 802.11-2012 is the newest one as of yet. But we have the B, A, G, and N, right? Why is it not A, B, G, and N? Anyone know besides Cameron? A came, it started before, but was ratified after B was ratified. So that's why B was the first one. Then 802.11a was saying a 5. They went back to the 2.4 with G, and N does both. Do what? It's after N. Okay, here's just some of the other ones. 802.11e talks about the quality of service. I is advanced security. I you will become very familiar with in this class. R, fast transmission, we don't do with it. K, radio resource management. W is management frame protection. Then you get into S, which is mesh networking. We're not going to really get into any of those. We're mainly going to talk about E and I in this class. All right. The details of the 1997 standard started with a 2.4. It was talking about the difference between frequency hopping and direct sequence spread spectrums, infrared, and woohoo, we were hopping at 1 megabit a second. Okay, frequency hopping is considered legacy technology with wireless. Why? Anyone know? Okay, read your chapter. 802.11b. Hint, hint, hint was ratified before A, You're going to see that on your quiz, guaranteed. You'll see it on your midterm, guaranteed. You will see it on your final, guaranteed. It was on the 2.4 gigahertz ISM band. It was direct sequencing and high rate direct sequencing only. And it started really, it quadrupled at a minimum the A's. So now we're popping at 5.5 and 11, right? And it's also backwards compatible to A. Then, or I'm sorry, the 802.11.97 standard, which is the basic one. 802.11a really got us going because it opened the 5 gigahertz band, and we did orthogonal frequency division, multiplexing, and you could go up to 24 megabits per second. So A doubled because they had some issues with it. And you could get up to 54 megabits a second so long as you were doing orthogonal frequency division multiplexing. Now, G, when it came out, it allowed you to do all of them. Extended the physical range by the OFDMs. Even though it lowered the speed of transmissions, it allowed you to do both. If you had a G router, you could see both A and B. All right, but you could do whichever you wanted. G is backwards compatible to both A and B because it operates on the same 2.4. N operates on both, so it's backwards compatible to all. All right. E addresses the quality of service. That's kind of a good thing, right? You want to make sure that you have a minimum level of service. And 802.11i amendment standard addresses the advanced security solutions for the wireless LAN. And like I said, I'm not going to really talk about fast technology or K. If you really want to look at them, go download them from the IEEE. Okay, Wi-Fi Alliance. It's when you see the symbol, that means there's Wi-Fi or wireless fidelity capability. All it means is you have two different types of security. You have WPA and WPA2, right? WPA1 came along with the 802.11i amendment, and it allowed you to do TKIP. WPA2 allowed you to do AES and TKIP. And both of them supported personal and enterprise networks, which there's not really much of a difference between the name of them. You just drop them down. Then we have the Wi-Fi multimedia, which is quality of service based on the 802.11e amendment. And then you have the multimedia power save. Again, it helps to save your Wi-Fi connections by limiting the power to it. So basically in your power save mode, but still connect at the same minimum bandwidth. All right? WPS. Now, what about WPS? You have a lot of people that don't know how to set up their Soho routers. You click it on the device and click it on the router and it connects, right? It sends all that traffic back and forth. Where's the security vulnerability in this?
Basically allow everyone to sign in.
Well, what happens if you're clicking it and I really recognize that you're clicking it and I add myself to your network as well?
And then add your computer and everything else.
No, I now have access to your home group.
Oh,
So that's the big bug with WPS is you want to make sure you only add those that have that pre-shared key. Is there any questions on the basic deployment of the Wi-Fi topology and the different standards? Which standard came first?
B.
B was ratified before A.
A came first. B was ratified before A, though.
I think you guys know the alphabet.
All right. And if I call you Eric WS, you'll know what I'm talking about, right? Those are the non-802 amendments that do not apply directly to speed or setting. Rather, they're more generalistic and regulatory. Any questions? All right. Well, what you're going to do now is you're going to open up and you're going to go take your quiz 2. And wish you the best of luck.